Hey guys, it is Wednesday, and today we are going to talk about epistles, and then you will be doing an assignment with that, preparing for next week's Zoom class. So, here's Paul getting ready to write an epistle, and you are going to learn about what that is and look at some examples. So, we're going to switch over to PowerPoint and then get started. Okay, so here we are, ready to start the lesson on epistles. So background information, basically an epistle is a letter. It's a letter that was written to the church specifically, and we have a lot of these included in the Bible, in the New Testament. And the epistles were written by major leaders in the church, like Paul, Peter, James, and John, who had known Jesus or knew God well and were writing to the church that they were not with. The purpose of a letter in general is to communicate with people that you are not around. And so because the church had grown and spread a lot during that time, these people were not with everybody in every place. And so they would write letters and send them out to the different churches that were spread out all over the place. The purpose of these epistles was, first of all, to encourage the church, to help them to be lifted up and blessed and made ready to face the world in the difficult time that they were in, because there was a lot of persecution still happening after Jesus had gone up to heaven, and the church was experiencing that. So encouragement was really important at that time. Also, epistles were to give advice about how to live as Christians. There were a lot of people who had not been believers before, and this was a whole new world for all of them because Jesus had just come and changed everything. And so they were giving advice about what does it look like to be a believer and a follower of Jesus in the world, and how do we do that practically. And then the third thing is that the epistles would often be a way to correct problems that appeared in the church when people got into arguments or conflict or were not following what God would want them to do. And so the leaders would write to instruct how to deal with those problems and solve them. So these are the things that the letters were meant to do, and that looked different in each one depending on who was writing it and what church they were writing it to and what those particular situations were. So we don't have time to read all of these in this class, but I want to introduce them to you because it's an important part of the church and also the Bible as we read these letters that were written to the churches, and then we think about how we can apply those things to our lives today. So this is what we are going to do. We're going to divide up some of the chapters from the epistles, and you're going to read and learn about one of them. And so you have been assigned a specific chapter, and you need to look in the document, which is called Epistles Chapter Student Assignments, and find which chapter you're supposed to read. And yes, you're reading the whole chapter. Okay, so it's more than a few verses, but this is how you're going to get a good picture of what the chapter and the epistle is about. And also I want to say this is an individual assignment, even though more than one person is doing the same chapter. So you look on there, you'll see other people's names besides yours, but you're not doing this in partners, you're doing it by yourself. And then you're going to report on what you learned when we have our meeting on Zoom. So after reading the chapter or during your reading of the chapter, you should take notes on the message of the epistle. And there are 2 questions on the epistle's assignment document that you'll be answering. And you can use that document to take notes. Either you can type them out or you can write them out by hand, because you'll need those on Monday. So on Monday, we're going to have a Zoom meeting, and then you are going to share what you learned from your chapter in that meeting. So you need to have this done and prepared by the time of that meeting. Okay, so I'm going to do an example to show you what that looks like, and so what it's going to be like in the Zoom meeting when you are sharing your information. So for the example, I read Romans 12. Now I'm not going to read the chapter for you on here, but I'm going to give you an example of the notes that I took so you can see what that's like. So the first question was, list 3 to 5 main points the author wants the church to know from this chapter of the letter. So as I read through Romans 12, I looked for what is the main thing that the author is trying to say. And then I wrote those out in my own words, not copying the verses, but saying the main point of the verse in my own words. And I came up with 4 from this chapter that I'll share with you. So the first one is, we are changed when we keep our minds focused on God, not on things of the world. And that comes from verse 2. So when we think about God more than we think about things of the world, that changes us and makes us different people. The second thing is, everybody has different gifts, so we should do what we are good at to help others. And that's from verses 4 to 8. And in those verses, it describes some of the gifts that we have that we can use. But the main point is, we all have different ones. So I should do what I'm good at, you should do what you're good at. The third point is that we should love each other honestly. This is in verses 9 to 10. So the love that we have needs to be honest and true, and not just pretend like false love that we're just making up to make people think that we are kind and loving. And then the last one is, we need to live at peace with others and do good in order to overcome evil. And that's from verses 16 to 21. So being at peace involves doing good and helping others and being kind and not repaying evil with more evil. So those are 4 different things that we can learn from this chapter. There's actually more than that in this chapter. There's a lot of things that Paul says in this chapter of Romans, but those are 4 that I picked out, main things that he has to say. The second question is, how can you apply this message to your life? Be specific. So now we're going to take those ideas that are mentioned in the letter and then say, well, here's a practical way that I can do that in my life. Here's how I can actually live that out. Now, you only need to do one of these, but I'm going to give you 2 examples so that you can see 2 different ways that this could be done. So the first example comes from the first point that I made about focusing on God. So I said, I will spend time each morning reading the Bible and praying so that I keep my mind focused on God and don't get distracted by so many worldly things. Okay, so notice it has a specific thing that I'm going to do, read the Bible and pray, and when I'm going to do it, so that it's directly specific of what it is that I'm doing. And then the second example comes from the last point about being at peace with others. So I said, I will live at peace with others during this time by not yelling at my family members when they do or say something that really annoys me. Instead, I will do kind things for them, like saying encouraging things and helping them with small tasks around the house. So I've specifically mentioned in this one something that I'm not going to do, and then something that I am going to do, which gives more specific direction of how I can actually do this in my life. Okay, so that is what you're going to do. So make sure that you check the document with the assignments so that you read the correct chapter, because when I ask you to share on Monday, I'm going to be asking you about that chapter, and your grade depends on you doing the correct chapter. If you have questions about what chapter to do or you can't find it, you can always email me and I will help you find that information. And make sure that you read the chapter and have your notes prepared, and then check later in this week for the Zoom meeting information. I will send that to you in an email. And then on Monday, we will hear about what we have all learned from all of the different epistles. So I look forward to seeing you then on Monday, and have a great rest of your day.